All right, so I'm going to shoot this video just to do a little brief introduction to Spinoza. I'm not yet going to get into the nitty-gritty of part one, but I want to spend just a few minutes to tell you something about why I love Spinoza so very much. And I'll probably start introducing it by saying that I'm not the only person who has really loved Spinoza. Really bright people have found Spinoza to be really worthwhile reading. Everybody loves to talk about what Einstein believed or didn't believe and all these other things. But Einstein did write a poem. It's a terrible poem, but he wrote a poem about Spinoza because when Einstein was asked about his beliefs in God, he certainly seems to have been largely an atheist, but he said this, that he believed in Spinoza's God, who, he says, quote, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world, not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and the doings of mankind. So Einstein thought Spinoza was getting something right in this notion of God, which we'll talk about in part one. But here's part of the poem that he wrote. He said, "How much do I love that noble man, more than I could tell with words. I fear, though, he'll remain alone with the holy halo of his own." It's a terrible poem, but what it does say is how much Einstein loved Spinoza. I am not like Einstein, but I will say this, I love Spinoza. I love reading the Ethics. It's one of the finest books that have ever been written. I can now read through the Ethics in a matter of an hour or so because of the way that it's written. It's written so smoothly once you figure out how to read Spinoza. At first, he's a bear. You just got to figure out what's going on here, right? You got all these definitions, and then you've got these demonstrations, and then you've got these scholia, and sometimes scholium, and sometimes you have these lemmas and corollaries, and what's going on here, right? This is not written like a normal book. It isn't. It's written in a way that I could see Spinoza. Now, Spinoza was a lens grinder, right? That's what he did for a living. And so you could see him sitting there grinding lenses and coming up with and thinking through the definitions and the propositions. That's the bulk of the book, definitions and propositions. If you don't understand the propositions, then you read the demonstrations. The demonstrations are just proofs of the propositions. And then to explain them more or to say something more about it, then you get the scholium. And it's in the scholium that you get a bit of Spinoza's personality. You understand kind of his thought process in the way that he structured the propositions and the demonstrations. But technically, all you really need are the definitions and the propositions. And technically, all you really need, are the definitions. And once you understand the definitions, you should be able to spin out the rest of the book if you really wanted to. That's what Spinoza kind of has in mind. So he gets these definitions down, and then the propositions kind of follow just to explain why the definitions are so important. Now, here's why I love Spinoza. First of all, I can read him really quickly now. And when I read through Spinoza, I get reminded every time I read Spinoza. I don't know how many times I've read the book now, but every time I read the book, I get reminded of something that makes me want to be a better person. Now I'm going to read to you the very last section of the Ethics. Strange to start from the end, but we're going to. The very last sentence of Spinoza's Ethics is one of the most beautiful sentences in all book writing history. It's a beautiful sentence. It says, and I have it actually on a t-shirt. My wife made a t-shirt for me. I'll wear it when I'm lecturing on Spinoza. But it says, "But all excellent things are as difficult as they are rare." This is true of Spinoza's book, but it's also true of what he wants to say about life and how to live it. Now, many college professors, and I have been guilty of this in the past, teach ethics as a subject matter with just material to learn, and we don't take a whole lot of concern about what kind of people you become as a result of taking an ethics class. And over time, I've just thought, you know what, I'm getting old enough. I can almost play that old guy card where I just kind of do my own idiosyncratic thing. And I've decided I care more about who I share the world with, right? Who I'm being alongside the world with, than I care about getting through a certain amount of material. So my aim in reading Spinoza with you is, one, to remind myself of what I find so beautiful about this book. Second, to help you think about what kind of person you want to be. Now, in being in the world alongside others, as we know, having been through being in time a bit, being alongside others, I have two ways that I can approach teaching ethics. One is I could try to leap in, right? And I could take your care away from you and try to give it back to you. And then it just doesn't matter. The other way is to leap ahead. And what I'm going to try to do with Spinoza is help you to think about the kind of person you want to be. It will not matter. It will have no value at all to you until and unless you reach a point where the kind of person you are matters. When you care about your being alongside others in a way that only people who understand Heidegger could really appreciate. But when you care about being alongside others, when you're highly motivated to be a good kind of person, where are you going to turn to figure out what kind of person you want to be? I'm telling you, one of the places you should turn is to Spinoza. The book is absolutely beautiful. He will help you to think about what it means to be excellent and how to get there. But be prepared for this. Spinoza's Ethics is as difficult as it is rare. There's not another book like it, so it's extremely difficult. But also the way he teaches you to be excellent is incredibly difficult. It's not just a matter of learning a few things and then being able to do it. That's not how being excellent works at anything. If anything, out of being in time, what you should have gotten from my explanations of it is that you can, should, and must become master of your moods through knowledge and will. But even more, knowledge and will not get you there. What Spinoza is going to add to that is skill. You have got to learn how to deal with your moods skillfully. And when you can do that, you will be able to choose excellence and stand on your own. So, when you feel highly motivated to be a good person, and this happens to everybody sometimes, we just forget it and get on with our lives and become, the average everyday they that we typically are. But when you feel highly motivated to own your life, to choose the kind of person you want to be, then you owe it to yourself to figure out your moods, to become master of them. And no one that I know of will help you to think that through, to gain knowledge of it, than Spinoza. But nobody except you can decide to do it. So here's why I'm going to read Spinoza with you and what I'm going to emphasize as we go through it. You have got to figure out what kind of person you want to be. That's the first thing. When you feel highly motivated to become a good person, what does that look like? What kind of person is it? Now, I'm going to share with you what kind of person I want to be like. And it happens to be an awful lot like the kind of person Spinoza describes throughout the Ethics. That's one of the reasons I love Spinoza so much. You may choose to be something different from that. That's okay. The point here is you need to figure out what kind of person you want to be, and Spinoza will still help you, even if you don't want to be like him or like the way the book describes it. He will give you some ways to think about developing skills. So you've got to have an idea of the kind of person you want to be. That's number one. Well, first you have to desire. You have to care. It has to matter to you. And when it really matters, when it matters more than money, or it matters more than Instagram or Facebook or curiosity or falling into the they, when it matters the most of all to you, that you decide what kind of person you want to be, then you can turn to Spinoza to start formulating that picture. You've got to get a concrete idea of the kind of person you want to be. And then you've got to develop rules to live by to help you achieve that aim. And I don't know what those rules are going to be, but all skillful practices involve rules. This is something we can get out of Heidegger, in fact. That skillfully living through life, developing coping mechanisms to master your mood, requires that you formulate, commit to, and practice rules. But those rules only matter insofar as you have some idea of the kind of person you want to be and how you're going to get there. So Spinoza is going to help us get some real practical meat onto these bones. But so far, here are the bones. One, you have to care. You have to care about the kind of person that you are going to be. Second, you have to formulate some kind of an image of the person you want to be. You have to have a picture in your head of who this person is that is the best that you want to be. Three, you have to develop and formulate rational, reasonable rules that will provide you coping mechanisms or skillful means to deal with your moods. And then fourth, you have to practice them. You have to commit to them, and you have to practice them over and over and over again. So these are 4 things that I'm going to emphasize with you as we read Spinoza, and I'll talk to you about part 1 in a little bit.